Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us tmosso@the1916company.com for all of your questions about purchase price or availability of this watch. And today we're discussing a model launched in 2014 and now discontinued, one of the finest divers available. This is the Cartier Calibre de Cartier diver, and I've long felt that this is one of the most underrated watches Cartier has ever made. And in many regards, this is what the original Calibre de Cartier of 2010 probably should have been from the beginning. So lots to love here. This is a true ISO 6425 standard dive watch that's been homologated accordingly with all that entails. We'll talk more about that in a moment, but first the basics. 42 millimeters in diameter and a combination of rose gold bezel, stainless steel case, and ADLC capped steel bezel. We have a thickness that's extraordinary, so 11.1 millimeters thick, one of the thinnest dive watches you can buy. From lug tip to lug tip, if we're just counting the case, 48 millimeters, and if we're counting the end link to end link total distance across the wrist, then it is 50 millimeters across the wrist with a weird in-between 23.5 millimeter spacing between the lugs. Now, what I said there a moment ago, we have a rose gold crown, a rose gold bezel. The bezel cap is amorphous diamond-like carbon on top of a steel disc. So this is a very scratch-resistant surface, but unlike ceramic, it cannot shatter. Now we have a rose gold bezel, we have a rose gold crown, steel bracelet, case, and clasp. The bracelet is a lovely piece that is distinctively Cartier, and you can see every single link can be removed. And there's also a little bit of a pre-curvature to these links to make them wear more ergonomically. A combination of satinated and polished links. As we move down towards the clasp, you can see that there are some little intermediate sized links in there in case you're in between sizes to help you fit this watch to your wrist. And then thick gauge steel double deployant with a twin trigger release system to ensure that when it is closed quite securely. We have a conforming end link that well mates this bracelet to the case, so it's a highly integrated look. And then we have flanks that I think we should show as they are here. Pre-owned watch, so these are always a little bit non-standard. There's a small mark on the lug up at about 2 o'clock. And you can see the condition of the watch is generally very, very good. A distinctive case design, as you can see, the lugs are stepped out from the case band, not quite to the degree of a Longa, but certainly this is no integrated lug Seamaster or Submariner. We also have a crown guard structure with crown guard flanks fixed by screws. You can see that there's an element of polished highlighting here to go with the satin finish, which is the primary finish of the case. And we'll throw the watch on my wrist so you get a sense of how it wears. I really want to emphasize that the shape of this watch is extraordinarily important. If you look at the shape of the case, the lugs come down and they arc around. And so when it's on the wrist, it sits over the wrist, hugging the wrist for comfort and sitting super low slung. Being only 11.1 millimeters thick, it will easily slide underneath a dress cuff. So while it is a dive watch, it is also a Cartier, so it can be used with formal cuffs and formal attire. And it is really, really thin for a diver at 11.1. I would recommend this watch for a wrist of, let's say, 16 centimeters circumference and larger. My wrist is 16, I think maybe even 15 if your wrist is super flat and oval. Take a look down the barrel at the clearance I've got with the lugs on each side. That is the definitive angle for you to judge whether this will fit your wrist. Taking a look at the crown guard side, you can see that there is a little synthetic sapphire cabochon on a screw-down crown. 300 meters water resistant. Now, the thing about the ISO 6425 is that there has to be one homologation model or one unit that is physically tested to pass all of the requirements of the ISO. And then you can build them in series. But every single example built, if it's an ISO 6425 diver, has to be tested to 125% of its rated depth. So if that says 300 meters, it was tested to 375 meters. This exact example, and it passed that test, that overpressure. The bezel is incredibly smooth, to the point that it's either the world's best 120 click detent, or it may actually glide on ball bearings. It is incredibly crisp, silky, and smooth at the same time. It's hard to be crisp with a snappy detent, but also glide. It's an alchemy that only a few, Grand Seiko, Rolex, and yes, Cartier have mastered. Being a 120 click unidirectional rotating bezel, easy to line up the index with the minute hand. You could see the watch is elaborately loomed, including that explosive sub-seconds. And then you've got a 0 to 60-minute count-up timer. I've often found dive bezels to be more convenient, easier to read, and cheaper to service down the line than a chronograph complication. Now you can see there's a little bit of a dished profile to the bezel cap, and this ADLC is extraordinarily scratch resistant. Taking a look at the dial, you can see that there is a sort of concentric pattern that's been stamped underneath the radially arrayed Roman numerals, which are very Cartier style, along with the broadsword hands. We have a rose gold inner bezel framing the small seconds, as well as a frame for the date. We have the little Cartier secret signature hiding up at 10 o'clock on the dial. And then the watch features both hacking seconds and a quick set date. Inside, we have a manufacturer movement that debuted in 2010 on the original Calibre de Cartier, the non-diver version. The 1904 PSMC automatic winding with a bidirectional pawl-based system, magic lever, 48 hours of power reserve, 4 Hz beat rate, hacking, and quick set. And this 27 jewel movement has 2 barrels, which is an unusual refinement for an ETA 2892 drop-in replacement. Well, it is the size of the 2892. It has a much flatter and mightier torque curve by virtue of those twin barrels. And that's a real refinement on a fairly basic automatic movement that helps to set this watch apart. And of course, this being an ISO diver, it would have been tested to a high degree of durability as well. If you love this watch, reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.